The Forgotten Mermaid, All Lost Hearts May Be Redeemed, by Gregga J. Johnn. 18. Bailey lay in the captain's bunk, fully aware of her surroundings, but too exhausted in her grief to interact or care. She lay there quietly under his covers, listening to him click and tap away on his desk. He mumbled to himself a few times and listened to voices that either seemed to relay news messages or sometimes just make jokes. Bryce intermittently chuckled to himself randomly, and Bailey tried to wrap her head around this new magical interaction with which he seemed so comfortable. What was he? He said Travell, but that word held no meaning in her mind. Bailey recalled the few snippets of information she had glanced through on his desk. There had been accusations of treason against the powers, and he had been called a Bach enthusiast as well as a Mer ambassador. But the tone of these two titles seemed to be both derisive and glorified. She just couldn't make it out. Perhaps this was all just a dream. She tried to sleep in order to wake. The captain's door burst open, and Mathilde bustled in with commanding presence. Bailey feigned asleep. "Knocking would be polite," muttered Bryce, not even looking up at her. "And not leaving me abandoned with the Bacht would be respectful," she snarled back at him. "My crew," said the captain, "have my respect, and I expect you as my guest to give them the same." Mathilde scoffed, but then she saw Bailey in his bed and hardened her heart toward him even more. "Men!" she snarled in disgust. "What?" Bryce looked at her with returned contempt. "You're all the same. Sex. That's your only guiding force." "Do not presume to judge me based upon your own failings or presumptions," he demanded, standing to gain a commanding presence. "Oh," she laughed, "so you dare to claim that you aren't keeping the chattel on board for your own sexual benefits?" "I dare to claim that I am captain of this ship, and nothing I do is any of your business," he demanded. "Now, if you will excuse me, my lady, I have more communiques to write in order to ready your return." He gestured with a show of restrained respect toward the door. "My crew is ready and able to assist you with your departure tomorrow. Tonight, however, I suggest you relax and allow them to mourn." Mathilde looked out the door in shock. "Surely you don't mean for me to sleep with the crew?" "Absolutely not. In fact, if you touch or seduce any of my crew or other guests, I will personally end your life." With rising panic she demanded, "Where am I to sleep if not here upon the bed?" "This is your island, my lady. I am sure your home comforts are better than any I could offer. I would never want to presume to bring any woman into my bed who did not come to it eagerly on her own." He bowed, and as she stalked out, he offered her a good evening. Mathilde did the only thing a siren or banshee woman might do. She screamed and rushed out onto the deck, flew around to try and startle the crew, then burst through the translucent blue barrier out into the waters and swam back to her fortress. She sat upon her rock outcropping, pouting and chewing upon another liver. They were her favourite. When she laid down to rest, she noticed for the first time just how hard her bedrock was. She powdered some more, and dreamed up all sorts of vengeance upon her rescuer all night long. Back on board the Pursuit, Mama D finished washing Barnabas's body with her bowl of chamomile tea. It soothed both herself and his taut-cold skin. Daniel had made a fine bed with straw and sail. He even brought up the drying lavender from the storeroom to lay about the body. He said it was to ward off any smell, but he laid it with such a careful design that his proud mother encouraged him to consider more decoration. This kept the young boy distracted from the horror of his duties. At the head and feet of the body, and at both hands, Mama D laid large metal bowls and filled them with tied brushes of sage. She lit the ends and blew out the flame, leaving only the smouldering end burning. A peace settled on board. Derek and Davies scrubbed the deck with vigour and insisted the two gentlemen give aid also in the cleaning. Dr. Scrandon asked to examine the body, but was denied any access to it other than a limited visual exploration. The Reverend prepared words for a typical burial at sea. As the sunlight gleamed through the waves, and above them dimmed and turned golden, Captain Bryce gently rubbed Bailey's neck to waken her. She hadn't slept, and pretended to not enjoy his touch as much as she did by faking her rousing. Her arousal was disconcertingly real, though. especially after hearing Mathilde's twisted interpretation of her presence in the captain's bed. She moaned grumpily, "Do I wake from this nightmare yet?" "No," said Bryce. "But a nightmare is only the past of the next dream that you make it to be." "What?" she said, still teary as the soul-filled ache of her body burned within. "Come, it's time to say goodbye." Bryce carried her to his chair by the desk. He had somehow captured the scene of a stunning outdoor beach upon his desktop. Bailey stared in wonder at it as it moved and wavered in the soothing motion of waves upon tropical sand. Some baby turtles were birthing themselves up from their buried nest, and she smiled, unaware of the precious healing that such beauty restored to her soul. While she was transfixed by the imagery, Bryce brushed out her hair and gently sponged down her skin, careful to not expose her most feminine self. He helped her out of her old clothes down to the nightshirt, and then carefully redressed her in long-fitting pants, a supportive tight vest, and a coat of leathery softness. When he showed her her reflection in his mirror, she remarked, "I look beautiful," as if in shock. "Of course you do," was all he replied, then led her out onto the deck. The Reverend attempted to take his pose at the head of the body to drone out his memorized reading, but Bryce shook his head and informed him, "I am captain here. The sole safety and guidance of my crew is under my care." Then he stepped in and led the ceremony. "By the powers of this oneness in which we are unified, we bid you, Barnabas, man of faith and man of God, fare thee well. May the energy it takes for the sun's illumination to reach across vacuous space and touch our faces with warmth and light burn your way to your next living." Bryce instructed his crew, "Now repeat after me. Burn your way to your next living." The small gathering repeated, and Bryce continued. The mourners quickly picked up their repetition roll. "May the energy that flashes the friction of electrics across the sky, inspiring all to seek clearer ways, clear the path ahead of you now." "Clear the path ahead of you now," the crew recited. "May the energy of the air that blusters and blows about us in an effort to pass on life and move freshness across the rotation of the earth pass you on to where you will dwell eternal. Pass you on to where you will dwell eternal. May the energy of the heat in fire that gives light and warmth and transforms simple raw produce into delicacies that delight and nourish our being bring you into your newest evolution. Bring you into your newest evolution. May the energies of water that pound and bubble in a continuously refreshing cycle of life restore your source to its next wave. Restore your source to its next wave. May the energy built into the breath of fauna, birthing new life through a dizzying myriad of forms, birth in you a renewing of life that cannot be corrupt henceforth. Birth in you a renewing of life that cannot be corrupt henceforth. May the energy it takes a single floribud to carefully open up so it may stretch out and feed and grow and reproduce, bloom within eternal memory the glories of all that you have accomplished. Bloom within eternal memories the glories of all that you have accomplished. May the energy that contains this earth as foundation and casing for the precious core that boils in a molten mass beneath our feet break open, and let your soul pass over into spirit. And let your soul pass over into spirit. And finally, may the energy to pierce, to hold together, and to decorate all areas of our lives with raw or combined metallic force hold you forever in our hearts and minds to do justice with your remembrance for as long as we all shall remain. Hold you forever in our hearts and minds to do justice with your remembrance for as long as we all shall remain. Bailey repeated the last line, for as long as we all shall remain. They all stood silent a moment and felt the energy of the world encompass them. Then a movement made the humans startle. All but Bailey froze in gasping horror as a dark presence passed through them and gathered up the freshness of Barnabas's frame, and his body was carried from out of their midst and left them forever. Bailey wept silently and leaned upon the body of her captain. Mama D and her sons nodded in wonder and respect and moved to return to below deck with their guests following them. Captain Bryce Deleuze stood patiently calm with the mourning missionary wife. She leaned upon him in consolation. Together they remained statues in the night until her legs weakened and her captain carried her to her bunk, where she slept soundly and restfully. Bryce continued at his desk and made ready preparations for the following day.